Welcome to Prader-Willi California Foundation's PWS Behavior Management Strategies for the School Professional. We're going to look real quickly at the physiological symptoms that impact students with Prader-Willi syndrome. These aren't all the physiological symptoms, but these are the ones that you'll most likely see at school. So we've got that very weak muscle tone or weaker muscle tone that is going to cause problems with balance, strength, coordination, and motor planning. You're going to see cognitive limitations and impaired judgment. Hyperphagia is the hallmark symptom of Prader-Willi syndrome, and it is defined as a dysfunctional appetite regulating system. And we'll look at that in a little bit. There are stomach issues, bowel emptying issues that you're going to need to know about, and temperature dysregulation problems, so that this student may become very ill, have a serious infection or illness, and she may not have any fever at all. You may take a temperature and she may not have any elevated fever at all. And she may become overly cold way too quickly or overly heated way too quickly. And because she has a high pain threshold, she could become very, because she's very ill and has no temperature fever showing, she's also not going to be complaining very much about not how she might be hurting or how hot she is, even if she's sweating profusely. She may not take off a jacket when she's too hot. Likewise, if she's too cold but not regulating temperature or pain very well, she may not put on a jacket when she's too cold. So very important for you to know. Self-injurious behaviors most often include skin picking and happen for almost every person with Prader-Willi syndrome. Speech and language problems increase frustration for most students with the syndrome who are really having a hard time getting their needs and wants expressed. Most persons with the syndrome have disordered sleep. Even if they're going to bed at a regular time and getting 8-9 hours of sleep at night, they still may not be getting restorative sleep. So this may look like excessive daytime sleepiness or even irritability played out with temperament and behavior problems. If hyperphagia is the hallmark symptom of Prader-Willi syndrome, temperament and behavior problems are the other end of the hallmark symptom of this syndrome. Anxiety is at the base of all of the issues that we're going to see in terms of behavior management, and we're going to really focus on these big time. Confabulation, I can't ever remember if this student has confabulation as a symptom. Mom, pipe up if she does.
Yeah, not sometimes she will.
Okay.
Initially lie about something, especially about food.
Okay.
But then she'll usually tell me afterwards, like, "Oh no, I did take it." No.
Okay. So she's as honest as she is as the day is long, unless it has something to do with food. But then she narks on herself later and says, "I did take it." That's great. Confabulation is making up stories out of whole cloth for really no apparent reason. The only reason we bring this up at the school setting is there are a number of students who will confabulate, make up stories, especially of concern is that those of abuse. So we've got allegations, false allegations of abuse we're most concerned about on the school setting where we're mandated reporters. That can be false allegations of abuse made by other teachers or related service staff, but it can be false allegations of abuse that student talks about happening at home or elsewhere. So be aware of it. You're mandated reporters. You got to do what you got to do. But many times we see these confabulated stories that have no basis in reality, which is very, very difficult to manage. So very briefly looking at the hyperphagia, that dysfunctional appetite regulating system. This is a physiological, neurological drive to eat or obtain food that lasts throughout the lifetime. It is the brain's driving the body like it believes the body is starving. So it's a primitive brain function that's kicking in, and it drives the person to get food, find food, eat food, squirrel away food, hide it later, at all the time. This never ends. The only time we see a reduction in it normally is when the student is really focused on doing other things, when they're really focused on whatever activity or task they're doing. The brain tells the body to store consumed food as fat in the body. So we're looking at a very different physiology for students with Prader-Willi syndrome than the general student who may be obese, and a very different body phenotype. And the brain lowers the metabolic rate to almost half, so that the body stores food and has enough energy for when it thinks there won't be food coming up. The vomit reflex is absent. So if you and I were to eat too much food, spoiled food, rotten food, alcohol, way too much, the brain would experience that as a poison, and it would, through the central nervous system, tell us to vomit, and we would vomit. That doesn't happen in most persons, almost everybody with Prader-Willi syndrome. So if somebody is eating spoiled food, rotten food, any kind of or too much food, that food doesn't go anywhere. It stays in the body. So we're not going to be giving any type of emetic to induce vomiting, because that will just cause more poison. And if we are seeing vomiting, that could signal a life-threatening situation, and you're going to want to prepare for emergency room and notify parents immediately, so they can help you consult how to manage the situation. So unmanaged hyperphagia plus that very slow metabolic rate can cause rapid weight gain and the potential for premature death from a stomach rupture, because the food has nowhere to go but out, and rupture the lining of the stomach, which is very weak muscle tone, or the food can, or the excrement can perforate the bowel and cause sepsis and rapid death from that. Choking is a very common cause of death in people with Prader-Willi syndrome. Potential for morbid obesity, very common when we're not managing all of these factors at the same time. And hyperphagia, it can cause behavior problems as well. Death can occur from a single episode of overeating. And it's really important that we understand that Prader-Willi syndrome is not an eating disorder. Prader-Willi syndrome is a medical disorder that is because an eating disorder is amenable to psychological intervention, psychiatric medication, psychotropic meds. Prader-Willi syndrome isn't amenable to any treatments. There is no medication that reduces that hyperphagic food drive. There's no learning to control this hyperphagic food drive. So the current state-of-the-art management of hyperphagia and Prader-Willi syndrome is 24/7 supervision and adherence to what's called the principles of food security. Ooh, that's in the behavior management, the environmental basics. We're going to want to absolutely cover that. Sorry, I've got lights on me here, I can tell. Nobody known to be diagnosed with Prader-Willi syndrome can live successfully independently. Those who have tried have either become morbidly obese and returned to some supported living setting, or such as a residential setting, or they've died. So for the duration of the lifetime, this student is going to live in the family home, or they're going to live in a PWS designated residential setting of some sort. So we're not teaching this student independent life skills that could lead to serious consequences. We're not going to be teaching her to ride the bus, to take public transportation or Uber or anything like that, because those modes of transportation lead to access to food, which is no bueno. We're not teaching her to use independent use of money, credit cards, checkbooks, anything along that line, because money equals food to the person with Prader-Willi syndrome. Students should not be subjected to cooking classes, going to the mall to purchase food to learn how to manage money, because this creates an enormous amount of anxiety and the potential for dangerous food-related incidents. So that hyperphagic food drive underlies lots and lots of maladaptive behaviors, but there are a host of neurological issues that contribute to unwanted behaviors as well. And anxiety is at the base of those. So anxiety it lurks just underneath the surface, just ready to be touched at the very least stressor or even a perceived stressor. So anxiety can cause maladaptive behaviors where none would have existed before. So if this student is exhibiting arguing, defying, verbal or physical aggression, or she's running away, the first thing I want y'all to think about is what's causing this? What anxiety is she feeling that's causing these behaviors? Now, repeated questions, excessive talking, and skin picking can also be reflective of anxiety, but these can also be reflective of other neurological issues that are going on with the student. We'll look at those later. So the more you're aware of Prader-Willi syndrome, what's going on and the symptoms of physiological symptoms, and what's going on underneath the thinking of the student, the greater success you're going to have to figure out what intervention do I need to pull out to help reduce these behaviors that we are seeing, the unwanted behaviors, or avoid them entirely to begin with. So anything or anyone that raises anxiety has the potential to cause a behavior problem where none would have existed before. It means that every single individual with whom this student interacts throughout the entire day has the ability to cause a behavior problem where none would have existed before. That also means we have the ability to reduce or eliminate a behavior problem before it even comes up. And the way we do that is by following some of the top 10 PWS specific behavior management strategies that are in our toolkit. The very first one is environmental basics. We're going to kind of skip through a lot of these after we get through food security, because food security is at the base of this. Food security is directly attached to the hyperphagia, the drive to get food symptom. So what food security says is, if this student has no doubt when her next meal or snack is going to be coming, and there's no hope or chance for her to get extra food, then she's not going to be disappointed. And no disappointment means no behavior problems. And that's what we're aiming for, right? So how do we do that on a school campus? It's pretty easy. Most of the time, you've got a schedule of food, right? She's going to have breakfast before she gets to school. She's going to have a morning snack at school, probably. She's going to have lunch at school, whether it's a school lunch that she orders once a week or she has a packed lunch that's sent with her. But there is a food schedule, and you're going to adhere to that without fail. If there are any changes to that food schedule, you're going to let that student know, especially if she's going to be eating later in the day. If there's an assembly and lunch is, moved 15, 20 minutes later, most students would be fine with that. Not this student. You've got to let her know she will have her food, but she's going to have it 20 minutes later. Write that food schedule down on her notebook so that if there's any questions about it, you can always refer to that written food schedule. And scheduled food must be as reliable as breathing air. We never use food as a reward. Wow, what a great job. I'm going to give you some Skittles today. Never. We never use food as a bribe. Hey, if you do another math problem, I'm going to give you a Skittle. Never. That will backfire every time. And never withhold food for poor behavior. If you don't finish that last math problem, you're not going to get your lunch or your snack. Or the Skittles that were part of your food schedule, if Skittles are part of it. So we We never use food in any way, shape, or form other than what is scheduled throughout the day with food. No hope or chance is the hardest thing to obtain in a school setting, actually at home, and actually anywhere in the environment, because no hope or chance refers to this student's ability or hope to get food anywhere else, extra food. So access to food creates hope, hope creates anxiety, and anxiety creates the potential for unwanted behavior. So if food is available, this student can anxiously think of little else but ways to get that food. So we eliminate access to food to reduce her anxiety and reduce behavior problems. How do we do that? We lock away food. We have students put away their backpacks. We have students put their snack bags in their backpacks or in a cupboard. We remove candy dishes or any visible food from the teacher's desk or anywhere visible in the classroom. Depending upon the student, we may need to lock it up, or we may need to get that food out of the classroom entirely. Nobody should be eating in front of this student unless food is also available to this student, because otherwise we will have behavior problems. And we want to establish what the rules are for quantity of food before we're going on any field trips or outings. And we never give in to a tantrum for food, tantrums for anything, but we never give in to a tantrum for food. If you believe this student has gotten food, we don't say, have you eaten those chips? Because that's setting her up to lie and feel a boatload of anxiety. If she's gonna lie, or even if she doesn't lie, she's going to feel anxious. Rather, we presume she did eat that food and you state it as such. I see those chips are gone. And then we have to take responsibility for her gaining access to food. This is her disability. Her brain drives her to get food. So our job is to eliminate opportunities for her to get food. This is her disability because she cannot, she has no judgment and very little impulse control to stop herself every time from being able to access food. So our response to her is, I see those chips are gone. I'll make sure that doesn't happen again so that you stay safe. Then you make sure that can't happen again. You secure that food source. And then without her knowing, let her mom know that she ate something or what quantity it is that she ate, so that mom can reduce her calories for the rest of the day or the week to make up for those consumed calories. Remember, I told you before that her metabolic rate is about half what it should be, right? People with Prader-Willi syndrome will gain weight on more than 2 fruits a day. So you can imagine how much weight this student can gain if she's eating a bag of chips here, or an extra cookie there, or trading somebody's lunch, or getting somebody's lunch on any regular basis whatsoever. So do let mom know if she did eat extra meal. And I promise mom will be upset, but she will be much happier that you told her than if you don't tell her, because she's going to see some behavior at home because of it. I'm not going to read these food security insights. I'm actually going to slide through. I'm going to slide now past some of the basics, and I'm going to bring us to empathy as our next intervention that we're going to focus on. Empathy as an intervention. Empathy is the ability to see another person's perspective, understand and share the feelings of another person. And most people with Prader-Willi syndrome do not possess the ability to see things from another person's perspective. This is an executive function deficit for most people with Prader-Willi syndrome. Hang tight for just a second. I've got to let my dog out. Wow. Apologize. So because most people with the syndrome don't possess the ability to see things from anybody else's perspective, that means we have to see things from her perspective in order to manage our interactions better. And empathy is the way to do it. It is a critical and very powerful intervention for most people with Prader-Willi syndrome, almost everybody with Prader-Willi syndrome. I really like this cartoon because it really illustrates what we're talking about. Here's our student with the syndrome who keeps saying, it's a 9. It's a 9. This is her perspective. It's a 9. And here's you, provider, saying, no, honey, it's a 6. No, it's a 9. No, it's a 6. No, it's a 9. No, it's a 6. See, now you're in a power struggle. And that is the place where most people get stuck, is in this power struggle before we even recognize it's a power struggle. But as soon as you see, oh, I get it, she sees it from this perspective, now I understand why she keeps saying it's a 9. Now you can figure out ways to manage, to help her see from your perspective that you want her to see that it's a 6. Empathy gets to the core of anxiety, disappointment, and frustration, and gets you out of a power struggle. And it puts you on the same team as this student. So now you're no longer arguing with her about it. You're on the same team to try to figure out, how do we meet her need? How do we meet my need? Working together as a team. At its most basic form, an empathetic response can simply be repeating this student's words. Other words that can convey your empathy from a very basic perspective might include things like, oh, I get it. You think it's X. I get it. You think it's X. I understand. You think it's X. What a bummer. We can't go to library today and you really want to go to the library. This is terrible. This is empathetic. It's not fair we can't go to library today and you really wanted to go to library. It's awful we're not going to library. You are empathizing with her because she really wanted to go to library, and it's a terrible thing that she's not. Empathy is neither agreeing nor disagreeing that she's correct, and it's definitely not giving in to her. It is simply communicating that you understand her perspective, her want, her need, or her concern. And when she feels that you are understanding it, that you're listening, that you're trying to understand it, she typically is not going to need to feel the need to turn up the volume of her upset, get louder, get more aggressive, to get you to understand her, because she's hearing that you do understand her already. So get into her mindset, look at things from her perspective, reflect to her what you think it looks like to her. Do not be afraid to join her in how awful this looks to her. Okay, you will not make it worse. If she's saying this is terrible that library's closed, it's terrible, it's awful, it's terrible, join her. It is terrible library's closed. This is just awful. Don't try to make it better. Oh, it's okay, library's going to be open tomorrow. If she's not saying, oh, okay, thank you for letting me know, we'll go to the library tomorrow. If she's not saying that, go directly to empathy. It won't make it worse. Only after you've given boatloads of empathy and you start to see she's either crying or upset, we can handle that any day, or that she's calming down a little bit in her behavior, then you can try to intervene and suggest your concern about whatever it is you're trying to work out. Empathy is a critical and fundamental intervention to reduce her anxiety, disappointment, and frustration. May be the only intervention that can be working. So again, don't try to talk her out of something. It's okay, honey. We'll just go to the library tomorrow, right? If that doesn't work, then immediately go to empathy. Don't try to use logic and reasoning, especially if she's upset. Just think of, we always try to think of really brilliant ways to convince her well, we'll go to the library tomorrow. If she's stuck on something like, no, library is open. Well, no, it's not, honey. Remember, we had a memo, it was closed, that library was going to be closed today. No, we didn't. That wasn't this week. It was last week, right? Stop thinking of trying to think of brilliant ways to convince her that you're right, because all she hears you telling her is she's wrong. And just give it up. Use empathy. Oh, so you think library is open? Oh, I get it. You think library is open. We're just wasting our time not going. So now you can refer, where is that memo that we saw about library? Where can we find that memo? Learn when to disengage. Disagreements can often be ended if you give her one last word. I'll say one more thing, and then you say one more thing. You get the last word, and then let's talk about something else. And then literally don't say another word. Let her talk. Don't argue with her, because you can't win. Remember, you are constrained by logic and reasoning. She is not. She can think of fantastical reasons why the library is open, why the memo is wrong, why the library is open. It won't matter. You're just going to have to stay with empathy and come back to those concrete reasons why the library is closed. Maybe we can call, or maybe we can figure something out to show library is closed. Distraction after empathy can be very helpful. Paint the picture is our next intervention. We do it on time. Knowing what to expect reduces anxiety and reduces the potential for unwanted behaviors. So anytime you're going to be entering a new situation or anything that's going to change, you've got to paint the picture of what it's going to look like for her, what's going to happen first, the next, so she kind of knows what to expect before she goes, before she walks in the room, before you leave the room, before you walk through campus, etc. Paint the picture, especially before field trips, community outings, any changes in routine. You've got to paint that picture. Do know that giving too much notice creates anxiety for some people, and then not giving enough notice creates anxiety for other people. So finding the sweet spot for this student is really important. It's not easy. Mom will probably be able to be helpful on what's this student's sweet spot, so that you can know how far in advance do we need to let her know certain things. Anticipate that what you do this time, or what happens this time, is expected to occur next time, and that she's going to be disappointed if she wanted it to occur and it doesn't, unless you fix that picture. Which brings us to our next intervention: fix a past goof, right? So that anything that's occurred in the past is expected to occur in the future. And that's why it's really important to get things right out of the box when we're dealing with a student or a potential somebody in a day program, or going into a new residential setting, or going to the amusement park. We've got to get this experience right first, because if we get it wrong, it's going to be expected to happen wrong again and again and again and again, unless we fix it first. So that if something occurred in the past that needs to change for the future, we've got to fix that goof, and we've got to paint a new picture to create appropriate future expectations. So what are our guidelines for this? First, we bring up the issue that needs fixing. That might sound something like, hey, remember the last time we went to the library and you got a lollipop on the way out? Then you want to incorporate empathy. Well, that was pretty good, wasn't it? Yeah, that was really unexpected treat, wasn't it? Yeah. Then preface the fix by reminding the individual of the benefit to them. But we always want to make sure that we do what's best for you, because we really care about you, right? and then you introduce the fix. So this time, when we leave the library, we're not going to get a lollipop. Matter of fact, nobody's going to get a lollipop on the way out, because that's much healthier for you and everybody else. Preferred choices is our next intervention. And this is also extremely critical for most people with, or all people with Prader-Willi syndrome, especially students, because Prader-Willi syndrome causes oppositionalism. The brain's automatic reaction is typically to respond with no. That looks like oppositional, defiant, and argumentative behavior. So how do we manage this? We avoid yes, no questions. Instead, we offer preferred choices to create the win-win. That reduces oppositionalism and it improves cooperation. Make everything this individual's choice within your preferred win-win options, so that you're giving her the experience of control, but not too much actual control. We skipped over boundaries in our environmental basics. If we, in the future, you can look at other trainings that talk about the boundaries, or in the next training that you attend, you can look, you can focus in on that, or in the handout section in the environmental basics. But boundaries are critically important to this student that you're working with. And because there's so much that is dictated because of this student's disability, most people have the high need to control everything, right? Because everything is controlled for them. The more we can create opportunity for this student to control options that she's choosing from, it increases her internal experience, her internal locus of control, without giving her too much actual control. Too much actual control is a breach of boundaries, which will increase anxiety. And again, anything that increases anxiety increases the potential for maladaptive behaviors. So preferred choices, you're probably all familiar with this. Do you want to put your backpack under your chair or on the hook? Do you want to work on this project for 5 minutes or 7 minutes? Even though this student probably has no concept of the passage of time, using time as boundaries can be very helpful. 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 2 minutes, 4 minutes. Do you want to, and then using concrete timers, not just your words, not just your saying, okay, time to stop, to set timers, whether it's time timers, visual cues, or auditory cues, can be very helpful. Do avoid open-ended questions, because these can be very difficult to process and they can create anxiety. Open-ended questions might sound like, what do you want to do on the playground? What do you want to do at PE? That's going to cause a boatload of anxiety. Plus, it gives the impression she can do whatever she wants. Even though you might say, well, there's only two or three activities laid out here. That doesn't mean anything to her, maybe. So you want to give her preferred choices. What do you want to do at PE? Do you want to do the jumping jacks or jump rope? So always preferred choices, even if preferred choices are, hey, we have only this or this, and she has a third option that she says. The preferred choice option can be, honey, we don't have the option that you want. We only have this or this, but you don't have to do either of them. If let me clarify that example. If you're on a field trip and it's, do you want non-fat milk or diet Snapple? And she says, I want orange juice. The choice is, you can have non-fat milk or diet Snapple, or you don't have to have anything at all. That's okay, honey. You don't have to have anything to drink. That can be that example of you can choose nothing as a choice too. Avoid ambiguity. We'll see maybe later, maybe very vague and cause anxiety. So if you don't know something, let her know, I don't know. As soon as I know, I'll let you know. Do avoid hurrying with your words, because most people with the syndrome, if you're telling them to hurry with your words, oppositionalism could kick in, and she may show you how slowly she can really go. So instead, use music or games to motivate or hurry. Hey, I bet you can't beat me to the door. I bet you I can get to the class faster than you can. Things of that nature. Do allow lots of time to process past her brain's natural oppositionalism and build in extra time wherever you go. I'm not familiar with this school campus or if she's got an aide, but this is where that aide or whoever is kind of working with her a little more closely can come in very handy. So if the whole class is going ahead of her and she's just needing extra time, that person kind of hangs back with her. So, and gets her to class when she's ready to get to class. If this person has obsessive compulsive tendencies, preferred choices can help manage that. Preferred choices and empathy can help manage collecting excessive amounts of things as well. Our next intervention is disguise your nose. Anything that looks, sounds, or smells like a frustrator could lead to a behavior problem. And no is a natural frustrator. So is but. Yes, you can do that, but first we have to do this, is a natural frustrator. So use no and but sparingly and disguise them. So for example, if she says, I want to go to lunch now, instead of saying, no, it's not time for lunch. No, we go to lunch at 12, right? And no, it's only 11 now. You want to disguise that with empathy. Hey, me too. I'm kind of hungry myself. Yeah, I love the lunch hour. Did you bring a good lunch? Empathy. As soon as we finish math, then it'll be time to go to lunch, and then we'll all go together. Don't be afraid to go with her and linger in empathy for a long time. We want, the whole point of things is to avoid behavior problems, and stay with your empathy long enough to avoid the behavior problem. Don't go to solution focused stuff so fast. Stay with empathy. You'll be better off for it. Be compassionately but gently unswerving. If you're setting boundaries, stick to those boundaries and use that broken record technique, right? Yes, we will go out to lunch. As soon as we finish math, we'll leave for lunch. I know you really want to go now. As soon as we finish our math, we'll go to lunch. And then her schedule is already set at this point, but in the future, or if you need to change anything around, do schedule non-preferred tasks before preferred tasks. So for instance, math comes first, and then lunch is the proverbial carrot, right? It's the activity after math. And do keep the individual thinking instead of spiraling deeper into a feeling. We want, if she's upset about something, you're going to be using lots and lots of empathy, and then trying to bring her back up to thinking and helping you kind of come up with some solutions when she's ready to come up with solutions. So what a bummer, what a bummer, what a bummer. This is terrible. This is awful. What do you think we could do about it? Do you think we could do A or B? What do you think we could do? Because we want her to be thinking in her head. That will help her get her out of her feelings much more quickly. Allow for the possibility of her rightness. Most people with Prader-Willi syndrome have a strong need to be right at all times and at all costs. So disagreements can quickly turn into power struggles that have a life or death feel to them, because to her, being wrong feels deathly intolerable. This is a huge problem for most students and teachers in the school setting and at home. So allow for the possibility of her rightness to avoid power struggles. So an example of that might look like if you're saying, oh my goodness, what a beautiful day. Isn't the sky gorgeous out here? It's a lovely day. The sky is so blue. And she says, no, it's not. It's yellow. Well, what do you care, right? Who cares about the color of the sky? So you might say then, well, isn't that interesting? You might be right. I never thought of that. Isn't that interesting? You see that the sky has got some yellow in it. I never saw that before. I like how you think, because really, who cares? Now, if you're trying to teach her 2 + 2 is 4, and she says, no, it's not, you're certainly not going to say, well, you might be right. Instead, you're going to say, well, isn't that interesting? You think 2 + 2 is 5, right? No, it's not. It's 5. You think 2 + 2 is 5. And I'm pretty sure 2 + 2 is 4. Huh? Isn't that interesting? I wonder why you think that. And then stop talking, because you're in stopping talking and giving her room in that you might, isn't that interesting? You're not wrong. I'm not telling you you're wrong, but stop talking. You're allowing her brain to kind of let go of the need to be right and actually allow in other options. It's very paradoxical, but it's very, very prevalent in Prader-Willi syndrome. Again, do anticipate, like mom said, that she might lie to get out of trouble, but then she might, narc on herself and say, yes, she did it anyway. Teach as if you believe she already knows what you're teaching, because many, many, many people with Prader-Willi syndrome believe they should already know things. They should already know this. So it makes it really hard at the school setting, because there's a boatload of anxiety already, because she thinks should know something that, of course, she shouldn't know it, but she doesn't know that. So a lot of times we get around this by teaching as if you believe she already knows this. So for instance, at the end of the day what the routine is, right? You put your books in your backpack, you figure out what homework you have, you pull those books and you put those in your bag. You already know all that already, right? So you are teaching this skill while you're giving the impression she already knows it. And do role model, it's okay to goof. Won't necessarily help her say, oh, I made a mistake, but maybe it will. Egocentrism. Most students with Prader-Willi syndrome are highly egocentric. Even though they love you to pieces, it's really not going to matter if somebody else is being disturbed by her yelling. So we're not going to say anything like, your yelling is disturbing the other students. She's not going to care. If she's yelling, she's advocating for herself. And she's not going to stop advocating for herself until she believes you're hearing her. So now what you're going to be doing is using that egocentrism, that it's all about me, to your advantage. I hear that you want something, but I can't help you get it unless or until you speak softly. So you bring your voice down so that she has to hear you, and she's incentivized to bring her voice and calm her body too. Teach other person's perspective. This is often lacking because of that executive skill function deficit. And then using things like, now that you're such and such an age, I don't know if you're capable of learning something like this. Are you mature enough, do you think, to learn this? It's a manipulation, but often people with Prader-Willi syndrome, everybody really wants to appear mature and like they can learn it. So you can use this to your advantage. I don't know, do you think you're mature enough to lead the whole class to the library? Most people will say, yes, I am. Okay, great. Let's do it. And then they will rise to that occasion. Motivate externally, because people with the syndrome don't do things generally because they're intrinsically motivated to do so. They do it because you're praising them, encouraging them, rewarding them in some way, shape, or form. So we're going to again, remind you never to use food as a reward, motivator, incentive, or punishment. It will backfire on you every single time. Stickers and high five and praise, those will not backfire on you, but using food will. And do remember that executive functioning deficits are very common. This student is going to need support throughout her lifetime on all the executive functioning skills: planning, prioritizing, organizing, self-monitoring, self-regulating, paying attention, beginning tasks, multitasking, meeting deadlines, managing her time, etc. Our last intervention is using those transition prompts to increase her flexibility. This student no doubt has attention deficits, but at the same time, she may hyper focus on what she's doing in the moment and have a very hard time transitioning from one task or activity to the next, even if she likes the next activity, if it's a preferred activity. So use your limited preferred choices, right? Do you want to stop in 3 minutes or 5 minutes? Use transition prompts to prepare the brain to get ready for the next task. Okay, you chose 5 minutes. All right, 4 minutes. Let's get ready. Start putting your pencils away. Okay, 3 minutes. Start putting your erasers away, right? And then counting down. Praise, praise, praise her when she makes any movement towards cooperating, because that shapes her behavior towards cooperating more. And then provide lots and lots of empathy if she has a very hard time actually stopping or meeting whatever demand you're putting on her. I know it's really hard to stop, and you don't want to stop empathy. I understand it's really hard to stop. And you chose 5 minutes, and it's time to stop. Okay. I'll leave you to read the excessive talking and repeated questions. If this is an issue, we can always go over it later. I'll leave you to read why punishment and the use of negative consequences is not successful with people with Prader-Willi syndrome. You can read that on your own. Everybody has a bad day, even the person with Prader-Willi syndrome. So even if you're implementing strategies brilliantly, they're not always going to work. That's actually the nature of Prader-Willi syndrome. This is a very challenging syndrome. And actually, that's just life too. But when you're incorporating more of these strategies throughout the day on a regular basis, you're going to be improving her cooperation, reducing anxiety and stress for not only her, but for everybody in the classroom as well. So on behalf of this student and her family, I thank you for coming to this training. My contact information is on the handout as well. You can feel free to contact me to brainstorm anything you'd like, any particular situation, and we will stop the share and answer any questions or wind down since we are at the end of our time.
Thank you. I hope, I think Sharon, was she listening? I hope so. Yes.
Sarah was listening, and I just was asking her if she had any questions. Sarah, do you have any? No questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Lisa, that was great.
Do you feel like this was helpful for you, Sierra?
Yes, it just gives me a better understanding of sometimes if she may have a behavior to just how to go about handling the situation.
The kind of words to use and how to go about managing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't stress enough, don't try to fix it so fast. Stay with the problem and what she experiences as the problem longer than you would for anybody else. You won't make it worse. Stay with your giving her empathy, having her explain it to you more so that you really understand it. That will reduce her reactivity. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I want to bring up because an incident happened today, and I talked about it with Lucia. So apparently at the end of the school day, something had happened in class, and then she wouldn't leave class to go home. And so I had to come in to get her from class. And so I talked about it with her, like what was she upset about? And it was her having to glue her homework assignment in her folder. And I guess apparently she didn't like the way it glued. She was frustrated. So she tore out the page because she wanted to start it over again. And I guess apparently her tearing it out, the teacher took the notebook away from her. And then she was really upset.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess apparently then she wouldn't leave class at the end. So I think it would be really important. And I talked to her about it. I think this would be a really good training, for everybody. And please share this, with Miss Luz, because I think because if you take it away, that was, I think, the big
That's right.
initiator. Yeah.
I
It was
hate,
like,
I hate skipping things because that taking away anything is
Yeah.
part of the behavioral, that's the environmental basic. We don't do it, right? If we take anything away, it will induce a behavior problem. So when do we do that? When she's got something dangerous, poisonous, right? Then we absolutely take it away. But taking anything away, especially out of hands and is going to induce a behavior problem. And it can be a mild behavior, or it can be a physically destructive behavior, not with this student, but other students with the syndrome. And so we would want to err on the side of thinking of other strategies to help her transition. Maybe she takes it home. Maybe she goes to the library and she can do it in another room with mom. Maybe there's a billion other ways.
Yeah. I think that was the biggest thing. It was just that she didn't like the way it glued on. So I of course I gathered the material, I brought it home and we redid it, but I think if just spending that little bit of time, like, I see you're upset. What are you upset about? Oh, you're upset. It didn't glue right. Oh my goodness. I see that it didn't glue right. Well, how about and if it's at the end of the day, let's just put it in there. Maybe you can work and re-glue it at home.
And I would
Or-
even say, don't problem solve for her.
Yeah.
Because at that point, oppositional thinking comes in. No, that won't work. I have to do it now, right? So, boy, it won't work. We've got to fix this. What do you think we could do? Could we do this or this?
Yeah.
Right? And yeah. Great.
Yeah. I and it's challenging because they're always pressured by time and
That's right.
other things. And so
Well, there's other variables, Lisa, that come in at the end of the
Yes.
day. And so I can see it escalating and becoming a real problem.
Yeah.
So,
Give them the choices though,
yeah.
that would definitely, that's something I probably would have suggested too. It's just, okay, do you want
Yeah,
to?
giving her
Do
choices.
we want to do this? Do we want to do it this way? Or do we want to do this? And she has to
Uh-huh.
choose. In ABA world, we call that like forced choice almost. So like you have to choose one. So a lot of the strategies that I saw in there, Lisa, were definitely like ABA-ish, first, then, like when you were
Yeah.
saying the math and lunch, like first we're going to do this, then. So it does mirror a lot of that. I think, again, this would be very helpful for Miss Luz to kind of sit through. So if you can send me this video after, I'm happy to sit with her and even explain things in a little more detail. This was fairly straightforward and easy for me because of my background, but it could be a little challenging, for other people if this is not something that they're used to, and like how to approach it and how to talk to students. So, and definitely the empathy, and it could have been the first thing, like, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling frustrated, or I understand you're feeling frustrated. What's making you frustrated? And then she could have verbalized, I'm not happy with the way this glued. And then here are some two.
And maybe recognizing too, how much time she spent on it, and she worked really hard,
You
and
did a great job.
Yeah.
And I know you worked hard on this, and
yeah,
I would probably be frustrated too. Like, I get it. So a lot of that.
yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies. I have kids I
Yes,
have to
thank
get
you.
to, but Lisa,
Thank
you
you.
were great.
All right, we'll get this recording off to you. Sharon, Jacqueline, I don't think I have your email. I'll get it to you, Sharon, and then you can share.
Okay.
Yeah,
And Sarah, if you'd like to watch it again,
Thank you.
you're welcome to. And I'm glad you were able to listen to the training
Yes, thank
today.
you.
So
That's
will get you
dedication.
thinking. Yeah.
I know. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie, Sarah. I mean, all of you. Thank you
Sarah,
for.
I'll talk to you in a minute. Okay. All
Okay.
right. Thank
Bye,
you.
guys. Thank
Okay.
you.
Right, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.